The room froze as Alyssa stood at the altar, her small frame trembling but resolute. She was dressed in a neat white dress, her hair tied into perfect braids. The 9-year-old clutched a folded piece of paper in one hand, her voice shaking but loud enough to carry over the gasps of the crowd. "Daddy, you can't marry her," she declared, pointing at the bride, a poised woman in her early 30s named Heather, whose smile faltered for the first time that day. "She's lying to you. She hates us." A murmur spread through the crowd, their disbelief palpable. Alyssa's father, Jason, a tall and gentle man in his late 30s, turned to his daughter, his face a mask of confusion and worry. "Alyssa, sweetie, what are you talking about?" he asked, crouching to her level. He tried to take her hand, but Alyssa stepped back, tears streaming down her face. "She said she didn't want me around because I'm black," Alyssa cried, her voice cracking. "She said you're making a mistake marrying someone who has a kid like me." Gasps erupted from the guests. Heather's face flushed red as she tried to maintain her composure. "That's a lie," Heather stammered, her hands clutching her bouquet so tightly the petals crumpled. "Jason, she's just a child." "She's confused. You know how kids can be." But Alyssa shook her head fiercely, her grip tightening on the paper. "I'm not lying," she said. "I heard her, and I wrote everything down." Jason looked back and forth between his daughter and his fiancée. The weight of the moment pressed down on him, and the whispers among the guests grew louder. "Daddy, please," Alyssa whispered. "Please don't marry her." The officiant stood awkwardly at the side, unsure of whether to step in or step away. Heather's expression turned cold and she crossed her arms defensively. "Jason, are you seriously going to let a child ruin our day?" Heather demanded, her voice rising. "She's making this up to get at Enchin. She's done it before." Jason turned to Alyssa, his brow furrowed in concern. "Sweetheart, this is a big accusation. Are you absolutely sure about what you heard?" Alyssa nodded firmly, holding up the paper. "I wrote it all down so I wouldn't forget," she said. "You always say we have to be honest, no matter what." Jason hesitated, torn between his love for his daughter and his trust in Heather. He slowly reached out for the paper in Alyssa's hand. Heather's voice cut through the tension. "Jason, this is ridiculous! You can't seriously entertain this nonsense!" But Jason ignored her, unfolding the paper with shaking hands. His eyes scanned the childlike scrawl, and with each word, his expression darkened. Alyssa's words hit him like a punch to the gut. "You said those things?" Jason asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Heather took a step back, her polished facade cracking. "Jason, it's not what it looks like. She's twisting things around." Jason's hand fell to his side, the paper fluttering to the ground. The room erupted into chaos, but his focus remained locked on Heather's face. "Is it true?" he asked, his voice rising. "Did you say those things about my daughter?" Before Heather could answer, a man in the crowd shouted, "Let the girl speak! We deserve to know the truth!" Jason turned back to Alyssa, his heart pounding. "Alyssa, tell me everything you heard." Alyssa nodded, taking a deep breath. She opened her mouth to speak, but before the words could leave her lips, Heather grabbed her bouquet and bolted down the aisle. Guests gasped and stood in confusion, some chasing after her, others turning to Jason for answers. Jason picked up Alyssa, holding her close as she began to sob into his shoulder. "It's okay, baby," he whispered. "We'll figure this out." As Heather disappeared through the church doors, leaving chaos in her wake, the weight of her secrets hung heavy in the air. And for Jas, On and Alyssa, the day that was supposed to be a celebration had turned into a reckoning that was far from over. The crowd was still buzzing with confusion and whispers as Jason carried Alyssa out of the church. The sun outside was blinding, a harsh contrast to the dim chaos inside. He placed Alyssa gently on the steps, crouching to meet her tearful eyes. "Sweetie," he said softly, "I need you to tell me everything. What did you hear her say? When did this happen?" Alyssa sniffled, wiping her nose on the sleeve of her dress. "It was last week," she said, her voice trembling. "I was looking for you, but you weren't home yet. Heather was on the phone with someone. She didn't know I was there." Jason's stomach churned. He remembered that day. He'd worked late to finish a project. Heather had assured him she was fine watching Alyssa for a few hours. "What did she say?" he asked, his heart sinking further. Alyssa hesitated, clutching her knees to her chest. "She said she didn't know if she could do it with someone who has a kid like me. She said I'd make her life harder, and people would judge her." Jason's throat tightened. Alyssa's voice grew quieter as she continued. She said you deserved someone better, someone who didn't come with baggage." Jason sat back on his heels, struggling to process her words. He had always believed Heather was understanding and accepting of his life as a single father. Her kindness had seemed genuine, her affection for Alyssa real. But now the cracks were glaring. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Jason asked gently. Alyssa's lip quivered. "I didn't know if you'd believe me, and I didn't want to ruin things. You seemed so happy with her." Jason's chest ached. He pulled Alyssa into a hug, holding her tightly. "You're my daughter," he said. "Nothing and no one will ever come before you. I'm so sorry I didn't see this sooner." Just then, the church doors burst open. Heather stood in the doorway, her face a mix of anger and desperation. The crowd inside had thinned as guests began to leave, their curiosity giving way to discomfort. "Jason," Heather called, her voice sharp. "We need to talk. Alone." Jason stood, placing himself protectively between Heather and Alyssa. "Anything you have to say, you can say in front of my daughter." Heather's jaw tightened. "Fine," she said, stepping closer. "This is all a misunderstanding. She's twisting things around. You know how kids are, they overhear things and get them wrong." Jason crossed his arms, his eyes narrowing. "So you're saying she's lying?" Heather hesitated, glancing at Alyssa. "Not lying," she said carefully. "Just confused. Jason, I love you, and I've tried to love her too, but it's hard." Jason's heart sank further. Heather's words felt like a confirmation of Alyssa's claims. "Hard?" he repeated, his voice low. "What exactly is hard about loving my daughter?" Heather's eyes darted away. "You wouldn't understand," she said. "I've had to deal with comments from my friends, my family. They don't approve of this situation. This situation." Jason's voice was sharp now. "You mean my family? My daughter?" Heather's face flushed. "Jason, I'm trying to be honest with you. I thought I could handle it, but maybe they were right." Jason took a step back, shaking his head. "Right about what? That my daughter doesn't deserve love and acceptance? That you're too shallow to see her for the amazing person she is?" Heather's eyes filled with tears, but Jason felt no sympathy. He had been blind to her true nature for too long. "Heather," he said firmly, "this conversation is over. We're done. You need to leave." Heather's expression shifted from pleading to cold. "You're making a mistake," she said. "You'll regret this." Jason didn't respond. He turned back to Alyssa, taking her hand. Together, they walked away from the church, leaving Heather and her empty threats behind. As they reached the car, Jason knelt beside Alyssa again. "I'm so proud of you," he said. "You were brave to speak up, even when it was hard. I promise I'll always listen to you, no matter what." Alyssa smiled faintly, her tears drying in the warmth of her father's love. But as they drove away, Jason couldn't shake the feeling that Heather's parting words weren't idle. There was more to this story, and he was determined to uncover it. Jason spent the evening going through the whirlwind of emotions the day had brought. After dropping Alyssa at her best friend's house for a sleepover, he returned to his quiet home-a-place that now felt eerily empty. He paced the living room, replaying the events in his mind. Heather's words echoed in his ears, and the anger and betrayal boiled within him. He sat at the kitchen table, staring at the untouched plate of dinner he'd prepared hours earlier. The unanswered questions gnawed at him. Heather's behavior during the confrontation had confirmed his worst fears, but something about her parting words lingered. "You'll regret this." What did she mean by that? Jason grabbed his phone and opened a search engine. He typed in Heather's full name, hoping to find clarity. What came up was unexpected. Her social media profiles painted a picture of a woman who was meticulous about her image. Perfect smiles, carefully curated captions, and photos with people who seemed just as polished. But as Jason scrolled deeper, he noticed inconsistencies. One account in particular caught his attention. A private Facebook group Heather belonged to called Upholding Traditions. It was locked, but the public description hinted at controversial undertones. Jason's stomach churned as he read the words protecting family values and heritage phrases, often coded for exclusionary beliefs. Determined to dig deeper, Jason called his sister, Monica. She was a tech-savvy journalist with a knack for uncovering hidden truths. "Monica, I need your help," he said after she picked up. "Jason, what's going on?" "You sound stressed," she replied. Jason explained everything: Alyssa's accusation, Heather's reaction, and the gnawing feeling that there was more to the story. "I need to know who Heather really is," he concluded. Monica didn't hesitate. "Send me her full name and any info you have. I'll get back to you as soon as I can." Jason hung up, feeling a sliver of relief. He trusted Monica to uncover the truth, but he also knew it might not be easy to hear. The next morning, Jason picked up Alyssa from her sleepover. She seemed in better spirits, chatting about the fun night she'd had with her friend. Jason's heart warmed at her resilience, but he knew they still had a long way to go in processing what had happened. "Daddy," Alyssa said as they drove home, "what's going to happen to Heather?" Jason sighed, keeping his eyes on the road. "I don't know yet, sweetie, but I promise you this. No one is going to hurt us or make us feel less than who we are. You're my world, Alyssa. That will never change." Alyssa nodded, her small hand reaching over to squeeze his. "I love you, Daddy. I love you too, baby girl," he replied, fighting back tears. That afternoon, Jason's phone buzzed with a message from Monica. "Monica, you're not going to believe what I found? Can you call?" Jason's heart raced as he dialed her number. Monica answered on the first ring. "Okay, brace yourself," she said. "Heather has a lot of skeletons in her closet. She's been part of several online groups that promote, let's just say, very exclusionary and discriminatory ideologies. It's not just about family values. These groups openly discuss opposing interracial relationships and fostering hostility towards diversity." Jason felt the blood drain from his face. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," Monica said. "And it gets worse. There's a history of her harassing people online, particularly those in interracial families. I've saved screenshots and links as evidence." Jason's grip tightened on the phone. "How did I miss this? How did I let someone like her into my daughter's life?" "Don't blame yourself," Monica said firmly. "People like Heather are good at hiding their true selves. You saw what she wanted you to see, but now you know and you can take action." Jason thanked Monica and hung up, his mind racing. He stared out the window, the weight of the revelations pressing on his chest. Heather's words and actions weren't just personal attacks. They were part of a larger, deeply rooted belief system. And he had unknowingly allowed her into the most sacred part of his life, his family. He resolved to confront Heather one last time. But this time, it wouldn't be in anger or confusion. He would face her with the truth, armed with the evidence Monica had uncovered. It was time to put an end to the lies and protect Alyssa from any further harm. As Jason prepared himself for the confrontation, a knock at the door startled him. He opened it to find a man he didn't recognize holding a large envelope. "Jason Carter?" the man asked. "Yes, that's me," Jason replied cautiously. The man handed him the envelope. "You've been served." Jason's stomach dropped as the man walked away. He opened the envelope to find legal papers inside. Heather was suing him for defamation. The fight was far from over. Jason stared at the papers in disbelief, the weight of the moment sinking in. Heather had turned the tables, using the legal system to silence him and protect her image. The lawsuit claimed defamation, emotional distress, and damages, citing the public scene at the wedding. He dropped the papers on the kitchen counter, his hands trembling. His phone buzzed again. Monica. He answered, his voice shaky. "She's suing me," he said, cutting to the chase. Monica's sharp intake of breath was audible. "What? For what?" Jason explained, pacing the room. "She's accusing me of defamation. She's saying Alyssa and I made false accusations to ruin her reputation." Monica's tone turned steely. "This isn't about the truth. She's trying to intimidate you. It's a scare tactic to make you back down. Don't let her win." Jason took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. "What do I do, Monica? I can't let this drag Alyssa into a courtroom. She's just a kid." "We fight back," Monica said. "Heather doesn't have a case if we expose her for who she really is. It'll help you gather evidence. We'll find a lawyer who believes in the truth." Jason nodded, her confidence bolstering his own. "Okay, let's do it." The next day, Jason met with a lawyer Monica recommended, a no-nonsense woman named Angela Davis. She was known for taking on cases involving social justice and standing up to bullies both in and out of the courtroom. Angela sat across from Jason in her small but tidy office, her sharp eyes scanning the legal documents Heather had filed. "This lawsuit is weak," Angela said, tossing the papers onto her desk. "She's banking on you being too scared to fight. But if what you and Monica have told me is true, we have more than enough to discredit her." Jason leaned forward. "How do we do that without putting Alyssa through more stress? She's already been through enough." Angela nodded thoughtfully. "We keep Alyssa's involvement minimal. The evidence Monica gathered is a solid start. Online activity, hate groups, harassment. Well, subpoena records if we have to. Heather's pattern of behavior will speak for itself." Jason felt a flicker of hope. "Thank you, Angela. I just want to protect my daughter." Angela offered a small smile. "And we will. Trust me, Jason. The truth is on your side." Over the next few days, Jason worked closely with Angela and Monica to build his case. Monica uncovered more damning evidence of Heather's online activity. Posts and comments dripping with prejudice, messages targeting interracial families, and even exchanges with like-minded individuals planning to disrupt diversity initiatives. Each piece painted a clearer picture of Heather's true character. Meanwhile, Jason focused on ensuring Alyssa's routine remained as normal as possible. He dropped her off at school, helped with her homework, and made time for their favorite father-daughter activities. He didn't want her to feel the weight of the battle he was fighting for them both, but the tension was impossible to hide entirely. One evening, as they sat on the couch watching a movie, Alyssa looked up at Jason with worried eyes. "Daddy, is Heather going to hurt us?" she asked quietly. Jason wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close. "No, sweetheart," he said firmly. "She can't hurt us. We're stronger than she is, and we have people who care about us helping us." Alyssa nodded, her small hand clutching his. "I'm glad we have Aunt Monica. She's really smart." Jason smiled. "She is. And she loves you very much." The confrontation Jason had been bracing for came sooner than expected. Heather showed up unannounced at his house one afternoon, her expression a mix of anger and desperation. Jason stepped outside, closing the door behind him to keep Alyssa from hearing the exchange. "What are you doing here?" he demanded. Heather crossed her arms. "You think you're so righteous, don't you? Digging into my life, dragging my name through the mud. You're the one ruining everything, Jason." Jason's jaw tightened. "I'm protecting my daughter from someone who doesn't deserve to be in her life. You brought this on yourself." Heather's eyes narrowed. "You think you're going to win? You have no idea who you're dealing with. If..." Jason took a step closer, his voice low and firm. "No, Heather. You have no idea who you're dealing with. I'll do whatever it takes to keep my daughter safe. You can't intimidate us anymore." Heather's facade cracked, and for a brief moment, Jason saw the fear behind her bravado. She turned on her heel and stormed off, leaving Jason standing on the porch, his resolve stronger than ever. Inside, Alyssa peeked around the corner. "Was that Heather?" she asked. Jason nodded, kneeling to her level. "Yeah, but she's gone now." "Don't worry, sweetie. She's not going to bother us anymore." Alyssa hugged him tightly, her small arms around his neck. Jason held her close, vowing to himself that no matter what, he would see this fight through to the end. Heather's threats hung in the air, but Jason refused to let fear dictate his actions. Over the next week, Angela intensified her preparations. With Monica's findings, they now had a wealth of evidence that exposed Heather's bigotry and manipulation. But Jason knew the court battle wouldn't just be about the facts, it would also hinge on public perception. To bolster their case, Angela recommended that Jason take a bold step. "We need to show the world who you are," she explained during a late-night strategy meeting. "A devoted father fighting to protect his child from someone harmful. Heather's narrative is that you're overreacting and vindictive. We need to flip that story." Jason hesitated. "You're saying I should go public?" Angela nodded. "A well-crafted statement can make all the difference. It'll put pressure on Heather and show the court you're not hiding anything. Monica can help frame it in a way that protects Alyssa's privacy." Jason glanced at Monica, who gave him an encouraging nod. "I'll make sure it's perfect," she said. "But it's your call, Jason. We won't do anything you're not comfortable with." He took a deep breath. The idea of airing his private life publicly was daunting, but if it meant protecting Alyssa and exposing Heather's true nature, he was willing to do it. "Let's do it," he said. The next morning, Monica helped Jason draft a heartfelt statement. He shared how much Alyssa meant to him, how he'd worked tirelessly to build a safe and loving home for her, and how devastated he was to discover Heather's harmful beliefs. He didn't name the groups Heather was affiliated with, but hinted at her prejudices, focusing on his commitment to shielding his daughter from negativity. "Alyssa deserves a world where she's valued for who she is," the statement concluded. "As her father, I will do everything in my power to ensure she grows up knowing she is loved and respected." Monica posted the statement to her social media accounts, where her followers, including fellow journalists and advocates, quickly shared it. Within hours, the post gained traction, with comments pouring in from people expressing their support. "You're a great dad, Jason," one comment read. "Alyssa's lucky to have you." Others condemned Heather's alleged behavior, calling for accountability. By the end of the day, the post had gone viral, with news outlets picking up the story. Heather's response came swiftly. That evening, she appeared on a local talk show, presenting herself as the victim of a smear campaign. With carefully rehearsed lines, she claimed Jason had misunderstood her words and accused him of using their breakup to tarnish her reputation. "I'm heartbroken," she told the host, her voice trembling. "I loved Jason and Alyssa. I wanted to build a life with them, but Jason's paranoia and Monica's meddling have made that impossible." Angela watched the broadcast with Jason and Monica. "She's trying to appeal to emotion," Angela observed, "but her story's full of holes. If she had nothing to hide, why hasn't she said the evidence we've uncovered?" Jason shook his head. "I can't believe I ever trusted her." Monica smirked. "She's playing a dangerous game. The more she talks, the more opportunities we have to catch her in a lie." As the court date approached, Angela filed a countersuit for defamation, backed by the evidence Monica had gathered. This move shifted the momentum in Jason's favor, forcing Heather to reconsider her tactics. Then a surprising ally emerged. One of Heather's former friends, Laura, contacted Monica after seeing Jason's statement. Laura claimed to have first-hand knowledge of Heather's discriminatory views and manipulative behavior. She offered to testify, providing messages and emails that supported Jason's case. Angela was thrilled. This is exactly what we needed. Heather can't dismiss Alyssa's account as childish confusion if an adult corroborates her behavior. Jason met with Laura to thank her. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. Laura sighed. "I've known Heather for years, but I've always been uneasy about her views. When I saw what she was doing to you and your daughter, I couldn't stay silent anymore. Alyssa deserves better." Her words strengthened Jason's resolve. He wasn't just fighting for Alyssa. He was standing up against prejudice and injustice. The night before the court hearing, Jason tucked Alyssa into bed. She looked up at him, her brown eyes full of trust. "Are we going to be okay, Daddy?" she asked. Jason kissed her forehead. "We're going to be more than okay. We're going to show the world how strong we are." As Alyssa drifted off to sleep, Jason sat by her side, filled with both anxiety and determination. Tomorrow would be a turning point for his family, for justice, and for the truth. The morning of the court hearing arrived, thick with anticipation. Jason woke early, preparing for the day that could change everything. He dressed in his best suit, determined to present himself with confidence and resolve. Alyssa stayed with Monica, who promised to keep her occupied and shielded from the legal drama. Angela met Jason outside the courthouse, her briefcase in one hand and a determined look on her face. "How are you holding up?" she asked. Jason exhaled deeply. Nervous, but ready. Angela nodded. "Good. Remember, we're here to show the truth. Stick to the facts and don't let Heather's theatrics throw you off." Jason squared his shoulders. "Let's do this." Inside the courtroom, Heather sat with her lawyer, a slick man who exuded confidence. Heather herself appeared composed, though her eyes betrayed a hint of unease. The courtroom filled with murmurs as the proceedings began. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s, called the room to order. "We're here to address the claims and counterclaims between Mr. Jason Carter and Ms. Heather Thompson. Both parties will have the opportunity to present their case. Let's proceed." Heather's lawyer went first, painting her as a victim of Jason's alleged smear campaign. He described her as a loving woman who had tried to embrace Jason's family but was met with resistance and false accusations. Heather dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, playing the role of the wronged party. Jason clenched his fists under the table, but Angela placed a calming hand on his arm. When it was their turn, Angela stood confidently, her voice steady and clear. "Your Honor, the evidence will show that Ms. Thompson's actions and words contradict the narrative she's presenting today. This is not a case of misunderstanding, but a deliberate attempt to manipulate and harm Mr. Carter and his daughter." Angela proceeded to lay out their case, presenting the screenshots and documents Monica had uncovered. The courtroom was silent as the evidence was displayed posts and messages that revealed Heather's discriminatory views, as well as conversations where she belittled Jason and Alyssa. And Laura took the stand. Her testimony was calm and composed, detailing her experiences with Heather and the reasons she chose to come forward. "Heather often spoke negatively about interracial families," Laura said. "She made it clear she didn't believe they should exist. When she started dating Jason, I was shocked. I thought she had changed, but her actions showed otherwise. She confided in me that she viewed Alyssa as a burden and didn't want to deal with the challenges of raising a biracial child." Heather's lawyer objected, claiming the testimony was speculative, but the judge overruled him. Laura's words struck a chord, and Jason saw the unease spread across Heather's face. During cross-examination, Heather took the stand. Her lawyer attempted to control the narrative, guiding her through a rehearsed script. But Angela's cross-examination was relentless. "Ms. Thompson," Angela began, "are these screenshots authentic?" Heather hesitated. "I don't recall writing those," she said evasively. Angela raised an eyebrow. "So you're not denying they're yours?" Heather fumbled for words. They've been taken out of context. Angela's voice sharpened. What context justifies calling an innocent child a burden? Heather's lawyer objected, but the judge allowed the question. Heather's silence spoke volumes. The tension in the room was palpable as Angela pressed further. By the end of the hearing, Jason felt a mixture of exhaustion and hope. The evidence and testimony had painted a clear picture of Heather's true character, but the outcome still rested in the judge's hands. The judge called for a recess, announcing her decision would be delivered in a week. Jason left the courthouse with Angela and Monica by his side. The air outside felt lighter, but the weight of uncertainty remained. That evening, Jason returned home to Alyssa. She ran into his arms, her laughter filling the room. "How did it go, Dad?" She asked. Jason hugged her tightly. "It went well, sweetheart. We told the truth, and now we wait." Alyssa looked up at him with wide eyes. "Will the judge believe us?" Jason smiled softly. "I think she will. No matter what happens, well, be okay. We have each other, and that's what matters most." As Jason tucked Alyssa into bed that night, he felt a sense of peace. The battle wasn't over, but he knew he had done everything he could to stand up for his daughter and their truth. Now, all they could do was wait. The week leading up to the judge's decision was agonizing. Jason tried to maintain a sense of normalcy for Alyssa, but the tension was hard to mask. Monica visited often, helping Jason stay grounded and keeping Alyssa entertained with board games and baking sessions. Still, every quiet moment was filled with worry about the outcome. On the day of the ruling, Jason dressed in the same suit he had worn for the hearing, ensuring he looked composed. Angela met him at the courthouse, her expression unreadable but her presence steadying. "Ready?" she asked. Jason nodded, though his palms were clammy. As ready as he'll ever be. The courtroom was quieter this time, the gallery sparsely filled. Heather sat on the opposite side, her polished exterior unshaken. Her lawyer whispered in her ear, and she gave a small, confident nod. Jason tried to ignore them, focusing instead on Angela's quiet reassurance beside him. The judge entered, her stern expression giving away nothing. She shuffled through her notes before addressing the court. After reviewing the evidence, testimony, and arguments from both sides, she began, "I've reached a decision." Jason held his breath, his hands gripping the edge of the table. The evidence presented by Mr. Carter's counsel demonstrates a clear pattern of harmful and discriminatory behavior by Ms. Thompson, the judge continued. The court finds in favor of Mr. Carter's countersuit for defamation. Furthermore, Ms. Thompson's original suit is dismissed for lack of merit. A wave of relief washed over Jason. He let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding, his shoulders sagging with the weight lifted. Angela gave him a firm nod, her lips curving into a rare smile. Heather, on the other hand, was visibly shaken. Her lawyer leaned in, whispering urgently, but her composure cracked. For the first time, her mask of confidence faltered. The judge's voice cut through the tension. Ms. Thompson's conduct, as evidenced by the materials provided, raises serious concerns. While the court cannot impose criminal penalties in this civil matter, I urge the relevant authorities to review this case further. This ruling should serve as a reminder that hate and prejudice have no place in our society. The gavel struck, signaling the end of the proceedings. Jason stood, his legs shaky but steady enough to carry him out of the courtroom with his head held high. Outside the courthouse, Monica was waiting with Alyssa. When Jason emerged, Alyssa ran to him, throwing her arms around his waist. "Did we win, Daddy?" she asked, looking up at him with hopeful eyes. Jason scooped her up, holding her tightly. "Yes, baby, we won. Everything's going to be okay." Monica clapped him on the back. "You did it, Jason. You stood up for your family and showed everyone the truth." Jason smiled, his gratitude spilling over. "I couldn't have done it without you. Both of you." Angela joined them a moment later, her expression softening as she watched the reunion. Congratulations, Jason. You fought hard for this, and you earned it. Jason extended his hand, but Angela pulled him into a brief, awkward hug instead. Thank you, he said, for everything. As the days passed, the dust began to settle. News of the ruling spread, and Jason's story became a rallying point for families facing similar struggles. Support poured in from strangers who saw his fight as a victory for justice and Ellie. Heather, however, disappeared from public view. Rumors swirled about her withdrawing from her social circles, and Monica confirmed that some of the online groups Heather had been a part of were under investigation. At home, life for Jason and Alyssa returned to its comforting rhythm. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Alyssa rested her head on Jason's shoulder. "Daddy?" she said softly. "Yeah, sweetheart? I'm glad you didn't marry her," she said. "I think we're better just the two of us." Jason chuckled, kissing the top of her head. "Me too, baby. Me too." As the sky turned shades of orange and pink, Jason felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in months. The fight had been hard, but it had been worth it. For Alyssa, for their future, and for the truth. Months passed, and life for Jason and Alyssa began to feel normal again. The shadows of the courtroom drama faded, replaced by a renewed sense of stability and hope. Jason made it a point to cherish the little moments with Alyssa, from cooking breakfast together to cheering her on at her school's soccer games. Each day felt like a gift. The public attention their case had received gradually subsided, but its impact lingered. Jason's story had inspired many, sparking important conversations about prejudice, family, and resilience. Local organizations reached out to him, inviting him to speak at events about his experiences. Though hesitant at first, Jason eventually agreed, knowing his journey could help others facing similar challenges. At one such event, Jason stood before a crowd of parents and community leaders sharing his story. Alyssa sat in the front row, beaming with pride. "Being a parent isn't always easy," Jason said. "It means making tough choices and standing up for what's right, even when it's hard. But I've learned that when we protect our children and teach them to value themselves, we create a world where they can thrive." The audience erupted in applause, and Jason felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. Alyssa ran to him after the event, hugging him tightly. "You were amazing, Daddy," she said, her eyes shining. Jason smiled. "Thanks, sweetheart. I just hope I made you proud." Alyssa grinned. "You always make me proud." As the years went by, Jason and Alyssa's bond grew even stronger. Heather remained a distant memory, her attempts to undermine their family ultimately powerless against their love and determination. Monica remained a constant presence in their lives, her fierce loyalty and sense of humor a source of strength for them both. One evening, as Jason and Alyssa looked through a scrapbook filled with photos of their adventures, Alyssa pointed to a picture of them at the courthouse on the day of the ruling. "That was a big day," she said thoughtfully. "It was scary, but we got through it together." Jason nodded, his heart swelling with pride. "We sure did. And well, keep getting through whatever comes our way. Together." Alyssa leaned against him, her voice soft. "I love you, Daddy." Jason kissed the top of her head. "I love you too, Alyssa. More than anything in the world." As they sat together, surrounded by memories of their journey, Jason felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. They had faced challenges that could have broken them, but instead, they had emerged stronger and more united. Their story was one of love, resilience, and the unbreakable bond between a father and his daughter, a bond that would carry them through anything life had in store. And in that moment, Jason knew that no matter what, they were going to be okay, because they had each other, and that was more than enough.